Hi everyone, I'm finally going to put all of my core paints into this tin that I got recently. You can check out the art haul video that I just did, and I am going to put all of my colours in, and I'm going to finish swatching this card here because I've already made a start on it and it seemed a bit silly to do another one. And I've also done 2 videos on the earth colours and the high chroma set, so you can view those. I'll be putting little cards up in the corner so you can link to those. And the first thing I'll do is write all the names on them. I'll swatch them out on here, and I've got another piece of paper here just to swatch those extra 3 colours. I'm probably gonna have to re-swatch these again to fit this into this tin, but I'm a bit too lazy to do that today. It's really hot outside and I've got the AC running, I'm in my studio, I'm happy, so let's get to it. Okay, so I've just basically got a Sharpie extra fine point permanent marker, and I write the name of the brand so that they don't get mixed up. You can see core on there, and then I usually just write down the name of the paint. So this case it's Phthalo Turquoise, P-H-T-H-A-L-O, and that's what I do with that. So I'm not going to bore you to death by filling all these out on camera. I'll come back once I've finished them and we'll fill the half pans up. So I think what I'm just going to have to do, because I don't know what ones are going where, I'll just fill these up and then we'll go from there. I don't know if I mentioned in my last video, but these things are really under pressure, and if you squeeze it just a little bit, loads of it comes out and it just keeps wanting to come out. So I've just grabbed a little toothpick here, and my usual thing is to just kind of sort of splooge it off there, get that lid on before more comes out, and then I just like to give it a little bit of a swish around to smooth it out into the box itself. Some watercolour paints you'll find are very runny and they'll just naturally go in there, but this one's quite thick. I'm not filling them right up. I've heard that the core paints get a bit too hard when they dry, but I just thought I'll put some in and I can always add more as I go. Look how much bigger this tube is compared to that one. I don't think I'll be running out of these ones anytime soon. I'll probably just use up the little ones and then buy a bigger one if I need to. Some colours I tend to go through a lot more quickly than others, so we'll just see how we go. Okay, I just opened the Cobalt Violet, and that is goopy. That is just pure binder. That makes if I actually get it on the screen. That is just pure binder on the edge, so it has come apart. Look at that. How much of it? Okay, look, all of that before the actual pigment starts coming out. I hate it when they do that, and it's usually cobalt colours that are very notorious for doing that, so I'm actually going to get rid of that and then put the colour in, because I don't need all of that grossness in there. Okay, I've managed to get some out, but there's still quite a lot of Aquazole just on its own, and it's really, really sticky. Like way more than gum arabic it seems. So I'm just giving it a mix to get it all in. Is that not the most gorgeously beautiful purple? I really hope it doesn't dry like a rock. I have a feeling it's going to, but I just had to squeeze some out and I can't wait to try this one. Hopefully I've mixed it well. I might just give it a bit more. Alright, I'm almost done for now, and I'll come back in a minute and we'll do some swatching. Man, I've just got this stuff everywhere. It's all over my hands and all over the desk. Alrighty, so I haven't yet quite finished squeezing out all the paints. I've still got quite a few empty half pans here. But what I thought I'd do is swatch out the ones that I haven't done yet so that I can put them all in order afterwards, because I want to have them in a particular order in the metal box. So I will have a swatch. It's quite hard to know sometimes what a colour's going to be like until you actually paint it on the paper. So I'll swatch them out first, and then I can put everything in order and have my finished box. So I just cannot wait. I have to start with this Cobalt Violet. Okay, so I'll just put a little bit of water on just because I'm kind of curious to see. I'm probably not going to wet every single one because it takes ages, but let's actually get that on camera, shall I? Okay, now it can be quite hard to paint with them when the paint is still wet, but I'm far too impatient to wait for it to dry, so let us just put some on. Yeah, it's as I thought, and I usually find this with cobalts, is that they don't seem to paint as well when they're wet. Sometimes I prefer to let them dry because often that binder is just a bit too removed from the pigment itself. So I will probably come back to this one when it's dry, and I will paint another swatch once the paint is dried and the binder's not giving me such a gooey consistency. I do love that light violet though, it is really, really pretty. Because I've got the heavy dioxazine purple, I just wanted to have a much lighter purple as well. Alright, oh these are so sticky. I've just got Aquazole all over my hands and I keep trying to wipe it off, but it does not want to come off. Phthalo Turquoise is next. I'll just put a bit on dry. I do love turquoise. It's such a lovely transparent colour too, this one. I've got Phthalo Turquoise in Daniel Smith's range, and I think in Sennelier as well. And yeah, it's one of my favourites. So that's a nice colour. There we go. And the last one that I bought separately, yeah, it's all over me, is the Permanent Green Light. So let me just wipe on this, and a little bit of green here. Yes, you can see that Aquazole in action there. So this one runs. So this one is a very bright green, probably a little bit, what I'd say, a little bit artificial looking green, but it's a colour that I, for some reason, really enjoy, and I will use it neat, unlike, I know a lot of other people really don't like it, they think it's too unnatural, but just every so often I like to have a really bright green, and with the sap green as well, that's a lot more earthy, so it's nice to have a bright green and an earthy green, so then you've got a nice range, and you can always mix the greens with other things. I find if a Permanent Green Light, if you mix a yellow in, you get that really bright yellow green, and I love that colour. I think this paper's a bit dodgy too, it was just a little offcut. So I'll put these to one side, and I will swatch the 12 that I haven't yet done, and then at least we'll know what they're all going to look like, and then I can put them into a nice order. Okay, so I've put these down as they were written on the box, but actually I think there's going to be a couple that I will move around straight away. Looking at the Nickel Azo Yellow and the Hansa Yellow Light, I would have put the Hansa Yellow Light first. But no matter, this is really just a practice piece because I'd started it and I just don't want to waste the paper by not finishing it. So, oh, you can see the water that's come off my brush there. It's voiceover, Becky. Sorry, I find it really hard to paint and talk coherently at the same time. So anyway, the first colour we've got here is Nickel Azo Yellow, and this is a beautifully transparent yellow. It looks quite dark and brown and dingy in the half pan, but when you paint it out it's a lovely deep warm yellow, and I really love it. I don't have many Nickel Azo Yellows. I think I need to get more of them because I'm really loving this colour. I decided to do what I normally do, and that's to skip a colour because otherwise the paint will bleed together. So the next one that I'm doing is Quinacridone Gold Deep, and this is a really lovely rusty colour and quite a bit deeper, as the name says, than the Quinacridone Gold, which you'll see in the row above. Yeah, I like it. It's a pleasant colour, almost a burnt orange, if you will. I'm sure that this will be a fairly useful colour for many paintings. It's a good Aussie colour, that one. And that's the Quinacridone Gold by comparison to the Quinacridone Gold Deep. Alright, now I had to do the complex task of figuring out which one to do next, and it was the quinacridone magenta, which we have already done. You can see it in the top row on the right over there. That was the only colour that was doubled, and I'm glad of that, because it would have been annoying if there were multiple colours that were the same in the different sets. So that's a nice colour. It's one of my favourite magentas still, and I'm just adding it a little extra darkness just to make it a bit deeper up the top. And yeah, looks the same as that, funnily enough. Okay, the next colour that I'm going on to is the Phthalo Blue Green shade. Now, Phthalo Blue is one of my favourite blues. My husband adores Phthalo Blue as well. It's so bright, it's so vibrant, and it's a really great colour for mixing with red to make purple, or for yellows to make greens. Because it's nice and cool, I find that you can get some really vibrant secondary colours with it. Unlike a warmer blue, which when mixed with reds and yellows can create more of a dingy kind of purple and green. That's especially true for ultramarine. It's not my favourite mixing colour, but I love a Phthalo Blue. I sometimes use it for sky, although really it is a bit too much. Although sometimes the sky really can look like that, so I like a Phthalo Blue for the sky occasionally. Okay, for some unknown reason, the next colour I picked up is Viridian Green, which is way over here. I don't know why I chose that, but that's the next one on the video, so I'd better talk about it. Viridian Green is definitely not one of my favourite colours. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier. It's one of those traditional colours that a lot of artists still use, and I know a few who always go on about it, but for me it's just not really something that I am ever really been keen on. I don't know, it's kind of dull and boring, but people say it's a good mixing colour, blah blah blah. I personally find that it's quite weak usually, though having said that, this one is nice and vibrant, so maybe the Cause one will be an exception to that rule on my account. Although I have heard from other people that this one dries to a rock and is impossible to re-wet, so I guess we're going to find out that in time. Now I've gone back to Yellow Ochre. I don't know what happened there, but we're doing Yellow Ochre Natural, and I found that this colour looked really similar to the Naples Yellow in the top left corner, although it is just a little bit creamier, for want of a better word, more opaque perhaps. But otherwise you could either have Yellow Ochre or Naples Yellow. I don't really think you need both in this set, but here we go, I've got both. Yellow Ochre is also another one that's probably not really my favourite. I've never been a big fan. I think I don't really care for the traditional colours as much, but yeah, you can see me comparing them a bit. I don't mind this yellow, it's quite a nice yellow ochre. Some I find it a bit boring. Now, going on to Hansa Yellow Light, or Hansa Yellow if you want. This one is very bright and lemony, and when I put it down next to the Nickel Azure Yellow, you can see how much brighter it is. I usually like to have a nice bright lemon yellow in my palette, so this is a good one for me. I like both of the yellows that came in the set. I think they're both useful. Perhaps some people would prefer one yellow to be a bit warmer, but then you've also got the quinacridone Gold Deep, so I'm not too worried by that. This is the brightest red in the set, Pyrrole Red Light. Now that's what you call a fire engine red. When it dries, it tends towards the orange or yellow side of the spectrum, so it's a very warm red. It's very bright and is quite close to vermilion, but just a bit redder than a vermilion, if that makes any sense, if you know what your vermilions look like. It's a good colour. I always love red, so this is one that I'm happy to have in the set. And this is another colour that I will frequently use just on its own, or sometimes mixed in with other colours as well. Now going on to Permanent Alizarin Crimson. This is a much deeper red, probably a bit cooler, leaning towards the bluer side. I would call this a blood red. I mean, look at it. It just looks like blood when you paint it out. How morbid is that? But I guess Permanent Alizarin Crimson would be a vampire's favourite colour. Now, this is a mix of pigments, which is why it's a Permanent Alizarin Crimson. The original Alizarin Crimson was made of one pigment, which, if I remember correctly, is PR83, and it's a fabulous colour, but it's extremely fugitive, so basically if you leave it out in the sunlight, it's going to fade really quickly, and it doesn't matter which brand it is, it will just do it every single time. So they went with the Permanent, which is a much longer lasting colour. Not quite as amazing as Alizarin, but it's close. And my next colour here is Ultramarine Blue, and I did a little bit of water on there just so you could see it run. You can see how much that spreads out with that Aquazole. Now, Ultramarine Blue is a much warmer blue than Phthalo Blue next to it, and Ultramarine is one of the traditional colours that I actually really like. It's not necessarily wonderful for mixing with other colours to get really vibrant colours, but for example, if you mixed Ultramarine with the Quinacridone Magenta, it would create a lovely purple because the magenta is cool. But if you mixed the Ultramarine with the Pyrrole Red Light, you're probably going to get quite a sort of a darker or earthier purple, because warm colours tend to mute each other out, I find. That's just my very scientific anecdotal evidence there. Onwards to Burnt Sienna Natural, another traditional colour, another one that I'm on the fence about. I don't hate it, but I just find I tend not to use Burnt Sienna that often. For example, I would probably pick the Quinacridone Gold Deep over the Sienna, and that's just because that Quinacridone Gold Deep is going to be a lot deeper and more vibrant than the Sienna, which sometimes can be a little weak. This one's not too bad, but yeah, I'm not exactly enthused by it that much. Lucky Last is one of my all-time favourite colours or shades, and that is Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey is such a wonderful colour to use, it really is. It's so much nicer than black. It's got a softer feel to it than true black has, mainly because Payne's Grey is usually mixed either with Phthalo Blue or Ultramarine, and it gives that just bluish undertone, which sometimes with a black you'll find that the black is, especially if it's ivory black, it's quite warm and maybe to the browner side, but this one's a nice blue black, and I really enjoy Payne's Grey, and you can water it out to a nice bluey grey, as you can see there. So this is all of the colours in the set that I have, including these three on the side. So what I'm going to do now is put them all together, mix them up, arrange them how I want them in the tin, and I'll have to do another little swatch sheet once they're all done because I really don't know what order I want. I love that group of colours, they're so beautiful and bright. I'm really looking forward to putting these in their new home, and I will come back with the finished tin. Okay, so here we go. I have filled this up. It's a few days later from the other bits that I recorded because I wanted to let them dry a bit. But I have filled up the whole tin and I put them into the order that I wanted, and I did just do another little swatch card to fit in. So this is my core palette, 26 colours, including the 3 that I bought extra, and I'm quite happy with it. I like the colour range. I'm really glad I bought that Permanent Green Light because the Viridian is very bluish. Almost, it's so close to the Cobalt Teal, but it's also got quite a lot of, I don't know if it's a paper or there's quite a lot of granulation in it. But I like this one actually. I've tried a few other Viridians and I never really liked them, although I have heard that once this thing dries then it's never going to re-wet, so that will be something to look out for in the future. But I do like the permanent green light. I think that's a good just general green. It goes nicely with the sap green, and then the green gold, which I nearly put up in this section, but I just decided that I had enough colours up here, so I'll put it with the greens. The cobalt violet, I am having a few issues with it. I don't know if you can see this, but it's been very, very humid in Melbourne, which is unusual. Normally it's really, really dry here. We usually have a very low dew point, but we've had really stormy, humid weather, and that is so sticky still. Look at that. Look at that. The Aquazole is crazy sticky. It's like really, really, really sticky honey, because I've gotten it on my hands and it just would not come off. I mean, it does wash off because it's water soluble, but it just sticks to everything. And look, there's a cat here I've got already in the paint. Oh, let me try and pick that out. Okay, so they're still quite sticky and tacky, although it's about 3 days since I put these in. Even the Viridian's still quite tacky. So it's like a set of Sennelier, or I think M. Graham's also do it when they've got the honey binder, and they stay quite juicy, even though they've been in the pans for quite a few days. By comparison, something like Daniel Smith is going to dry pretty quickly within your pans, and then they re-wet quite well, but yes, they're a lot drier once they go into the pans. These ones are very sticky. I don't know if they're going to dry up further once we get some drier weather, so that will be something I will need to wait and see. And also, because the binder had split from the cobalt violet, I'm finding it a little bit hard to re-wet it, so I was really hoping it would dry so then I can, you know, wash the binder off, so to speak, with a brush. But that's not to be, and it's a bit weaker than I would like, but I do really love the colour. I think the colour is really pretty, and you can see that there is granulation in there, but it's not as saturated as I would like it to be, and I think that's mainly because the binder's split. The cobalt teal is quite similar to the cobalt violet with its granulation, and I think that's about all it is. Oh, the ultramarine obviously usually is a colour that will granulate to some extent as well, and you can see that that's got quite a bit there. But otherwise, it's a great palette. I'm happy I've finally gotten all of these actually together, and I thought I would do a painting with these. With the paper that I bought in my last art supplies haul, that Montmartre watercolour paper block that is 100% cotton on a cold pressed paper, and I thought I'd just make a little painting. This is a size A5, so it's not very big, but I thought I'd have a play around with the paints and see what I can come up with. Okay, so I've done a very original drawing of a rose here. This is a rose out of my garden, and I decided I was just going to paint it in rainbow colours so that I can use as many of the 26 paints as possible. I didn't use them all, but enough I think to get a good idea of how they act. So this is the Dioxazine Purple, which I have painted with before in one of my earlier videos. It's a very strong, bold colour. And then I went in with the Cobalt Violet, which is proving to be incredibly recalcitrant and does not want to mix with that binder properly, so it's like it's a really, really gummy texture, and I had the worst time trying to get paint out of it. I have the buyer's remorse on that one. Anyway, I moved on to the Quinacridone Magenta, and that's a lovely free-flowing colour, very vibrant, so that one is a much easier colour to use. It's such a shame about the Cobalt Violet because it's such a pretty colour, but it's so bloomin' stubborn, I just couldn't get it to work. Anyway, moving on. Look at that phthalo blue. Is that not just the loudest blue you've ever seen? It's so bright, it's so runny and vibrant. I really love this one. I think this might be going up there with one of my favourite brands of phthalo blue as well. I'd say for at least some of the colours, Core's claim of having really vibrant paints is actually looking to be quite true. I moved on to some ultramarine, and that's also a really, really vibrant blue, and I made a bit of a mess here because I was far too impatient to wait for other sections to dry, so I had a bit of seepage on a few of them. I'll come back later and fix them up. Okay, so I liked the ultramarine, and you can see a lot of the colours re-wet really quickly there. This is the turquoise, which was a nice colour, I liked that. That's the phthalo turquoise. And that works as expected. I was quite happy with that tube. No worries there. Decent turquoisey colour and lots of pigmentation, which is what I'd expect. Okay, now I went on here with the cobalt teal. Now see, this is a cobalt colour too, but this one's really vibrant, so I don't get what the issue with the violet is. The teal is the same sort of chemical, but it was fine. I had no issues with the cobalt teal. That run re-wet really easily. And now I'm moving on to the Viridian, which I have to say I really quite like this one. It's a nice muted green, and so far it's been really vibrant. I mean, sure, my paints haven't still fully dried, but no complaints here at the moment. And then I went on with that much brighter permanent green light, and you can see that it is brighter than the Viridian, but I think they complement each other quite well, so I'm glad I got the permanent green light. And then I went in with a bit of green gold, which you can see is far yellower than the permanent green light, so not quite a seamless spectrum, but never mind, it'll have to do. I didn't really mix the paints, I just wanted to use them neat to see how they would function on the paper. And then I went in with the Nickel Azo Yellow, which is a lovely transparent colour. Went over again with the green because I'd stuffed something up there. And as I'm getting further into the rose, it was getting a lot more fiddly, so the colours are becoming a lot harder to wet the paper and then put the colour on, so I was just painting the colour straight onto the paper. And I'm going in with some of the orange, that Pyrrole Red, and then the darkest one will be the permanent alizarin crimson. So those are all of the colours that I used on the rose, which is quite a lot in the end. And once again I've ended up with a rainbow. I tend to do that quite a lot. And then I decided that the rose was floating in space, so it needed to be grounded, and I used the Payne's Grey as a shadow underneath. Now, the Payne's Grey I found was quite easily absorbed into the paper and did require a few layers, but as you can see it just gets darker and darker and darker, and it's a fabulous colour. I really love it. So no complaints with that. I do come back to it again because as you can see I'm getting those tendrils on the paper, and I think it's more the paint rather than the paper because I've had that happen on a few different ones. I went over some of the colours again, like the quinacridone magenta I've noticed sinks into the paper and needs to be glazed over. I tried to get a bit more cobalt violet on and it worked a bit better. It's still pretty, but yeah, I'm a bit disappointed, I have to say. The dioxazine purple I just made a little bit darker, and that came up quite nicely too, so that's a lovely vibrant one. And then the background had dried, so in I went again with some really strong Payne's Grey, and I have to say that this Montmartre watercolour paper, which is 100% cotton, is really great. It took a lot of water and worked just as well as some of the bigger name brands out there, so yeah, I would use this paper again anytime. I put a little bit of the quinacridone Gold Deep in the background and I just tapped it on, carefully trying to avoid the rose, and I don't think I got any on, which is a surprise for me. And then I was just fiddling with the background. You know when sometimes you just need to leave something alone and you don't, and I almost wrecked it, but I think I just managed to pull it back at the end, and I decided I was not going to touch it any further because yeah, I was just going to make a mess. Then I got my palette knife and sliced it out, and that was really easy, so I'm happy about that. And here we have the finished painting. It's a little bit cartoony, but I think it really does showcase just how bright the core colours are. They were right when they said that, so I'll give them credit where credit is due. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this long video, and I am done with all of my core paints. I'm happy with the set, except perhaps for that cobalt violet, which I'm just not going to talk about anymore because there's no taking it back. I've already used it, and what are you going to do? I'll keep persevering and hopefully I'll get something out of it. Maybe I need to mix the tube a bit and see if I can get the pigment to combine. But other than that, I'm finished. Have a fabulous day, and I will swatch you all again later. Bye!